Okay, so they'll work. What we're looking at today, find these three definitions, and then you're going to go to a website, fourbears.io, and you're going to do the following things. You're going to look up your last name. It's going to tell you the top three countries of location. I want you to write those down in your bell work as well. But then when you're done with that, you're going to open up Classroom. You're going to find this map that I've linked, and hopefully you will be able to click on this map and add the point where your name is most prevalent. So, like, let's say I looked up Soleil, which is, I will tell you where that is momentarily. But if I looked up my last name, Soleil, it's going to tell me either forename or surname. I'm looking up surname, and it's going to tell me it's the 187th most common name in the world, but it's most prevalent in the country of Yemen. Now, if I go down a little bit, all of these dark areas are where my last name is featured. So, what I want to do is I want to look at this map, and some of this will be just kind of exploring on your own of give me three countries where you see it the most densely populated, the most prevalent. So, like in Algeria, there's one in like I think it says 165,000, but over in like Saudi Arabia, it's one in 206. In America, it's one in 40,000. And so once you have that location, like I would come over here then, if it's most prevalent in Yemen, I'd find the country of Yemen. I would then drop this on there, and I'm just going to add it to map. And then what I would ask you to do is to put your last name. Okay, maybe just put Soleil or whatever your last name is, and then what period I have you. Okay, and the hope is by the end of today that we would have a lot of kids have their stuff on. I don't know why. Play dash one for first hour. All of a sudden it's posted there, and as I back out, I should see a lot of different people located. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. Follow those steps, find the definition, post all those things, and then in 5 minutes times after I post attendance, I will give you your next step. Questions, comments for the good of the cause? Anyone have anything? Okay, here we go. Yeah. So as we finish this, you should have seen that your name is kind of all over the place, but a lot of you have it in America, which is great. Now, what's interesting though is I was looking at Dolph's, like when he did his, the most dense area it was located, so like where it's most common, like in a small area, was the country of Guam, which is interesting when you think of the name Dolph because it does have European traits. And let me see if this is updated with your pins anywhere. We've got me now. In theory, this should update and a lot of you posted perfect. Now, a lot of you are in America, that's cool. But my hope is that you saw this when you were looking at the Four Bears site. Is that obviously our names come from somewhere, right? And there must be a connection if I type in the name Soleil, and it seems to be most present in Northern Africa and in the Middle East, and somehow understanding that they had to have started here and somehow ended up in the other side of the world. And so, what I want to do today is I want to look at a couple of things, mainly focused on the idea of the first people and how they arrived in America. So, what we're going to do, your objective for today is to be to determine which theory you think is correct. We're going to look at two primary theories. One we'll look at today, one we'll look at tomorrow when you're at home. And then you're going to make a determination about it and we'll move forward. Okay? It is our first regular Monday. I know we had last week, but it was kind of a still getting to know you, who's going to show up kind of thing. And so every Monday I do a little bit of a light housekeeping. And when I say housekeeping, that means I just talk about things that are going well and things that I see that can be improved. Sometimes I'll show motivational videos, or if I have announcements that you need to have, that's when all that would happen to be on Monday. So this week works out much better than last week. So things that are going well, honestly, I'm super glad you're here. You guys have been super solid with your attendance. Behavior has been better than I could have ever hoped. You guys have been super prepared, no dead Chromebooks, and you're participating, all of which make my life easier. Now, on the flip side of that, you guys told me right out of the gate, sometimes the amount of work I'm doing on the virtual days is a lot more than what feels like normal, and I will work on that. I'm also working on how to organize Google Classroom, so like on the days you're not here, how do you know what I'm doing? So most likely what I'm going to do starting today, so tomorrow when you're not here, you'll know what to do, is I'm just going to post a common assignment for anyone, whether you're here, whether you're home, whether you're virtual. Just look for that day's assignment. We're going to be in the Three Worlds Meet topic and do that assignment. Again, I will work on the length of assignments, and I have to do a better job of connecting with you guys when you're not here. So know that that's stuff I'm working on. If there's other things you think I could do to help make class better, please let me know. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of background reading, and then I'm going to show you the first video clip, which introduces where they found the oldest fossil in this side of the world. And then we'll talk about some of those main points, and I'll show you a second clip that introduces our first theory about a group called the Clovis people, and then we'll have an exit ticket and you're out of here. So it should be a pretty easy day today, I think. That's where I'm kind of going, okay? So if you would join me in Google Classroom, there is a document you need to open. On mine, it says updated the first Americans. On yours, when you view the assignment, it's over here on the right-hand side. Open that document, and it's going to look like this. Open that document up. When you have it, just give me a quick thumbs up so I know that we're good, Brown. Thank you. AJ, you got it, kid? You got it? You find that document? Cool. Dolph, thank you. Bella, you got it? Thank you. Esmeralda, you got it? Cook, you got it? Pedro got it? Cool. Okay. Now it's just Concord Jr. Thanks, Dolph. Okay, so here's the thing with this document. First thing I would do right out of the gate is blow it up to 100. Okay. Now, whenever we do these kind of assignments, whenever I have this stuff, we will always start with a historical background. You'll see these worksheets a ton. There's a couple of things I expect of them. One, you write in complete sentences, and two, that you have these completed so you can better understand the context of when we look at something. Remember that graffiti activity we did? Part of what we had to do is understand the background before we can move forward, understand what was happening with it. So let's start this together, okay? I want to start, this should have connected with the Why History Matters document last week, but I want to do the first question together, and then we'll read through a couple of these, and then we'll watch our first video clip. So here's my question for you. If you feel like you have a good answer, I hope you do. What are primary sources? Someone give me an answer for primary sources, and then I will write it here in a little bit bigger of a font. We'll go with you, birthday girl. What's a primary source? Okay, so Auburn said something coming directly from the person. So let's say it like this. A primary source, let's say right, is a first-hand account of an experience or an event. Okay, things like journals, things like interviews, things like conversations, things like maybe a drawing if someone was there, things like what else could be a first-hand account? Maybe a video, someone recorded a video while they were there. Right? You don't have to write all these down. But you get the idea. Right? These things that we can pull from that tell us a first-hand experience. Right? I can pull this textbook out. We can read page 1, and we'll talk about the arrival of man. The problem with that is that's not really a first-hand account. That's a second-hand account for someone who is not directly connected to the event. And so what we want to look at then is the second question. So with this, like we have done one time before, we will popcorn read. So I will read this first one, and the question we're trying to answer is how do historians write history when they don't have primary sources, right? Because one of the positive things that we have is that we have written history. So I don't care if Ethan Dolph is here today or if his ancestors that were here 150 years ago. If they write in English, I'm going to know what he's saying, right? But what do you do when you don't have that, or you don't have a common language, or you have a group of people that have a language that we don't know how to interpret or decipher? So here's what this says. Historians often use textual evidence, especially from reliable primary sources, to support their claims about the causes and effects of what happened in the past. What historians do, however, when there aren't any written text, and what do they do, What do historians do, however, when there aren't any written text and they have to rely on scientific data instead? An especially difficult question for historians is what they should do when scientists disagree with each other and use some data that support conflicting theories. Okay? So, how do historians write history when they don't have a primary source? What is the answer, Bella Allen? If you don't have a primary source, what are you going to use? 2 words. Not textual. If you don't have that, what are you going to use? Scientific data. Okay. Now, the problem with this, because they use scientific data. Now, the problem with this, as you'll see today, is that we're going to have 2 differing viewpoints on how the first peoples arrived in America. You got one group that, based on the data that they've collected, say this is how people must have arrived. Tomorrow, you'll be introduced to a different idea, and they say, well, based on the evidence we have, this is how we believe people arrived. Okay, but when you don't have actual written text, like Bella said first, you use the scientific data that you do have, and it's probably still going to be pretty limited because at the end of the day, you'll see this video that we watched is referencing something that happened 13,500 years ago. We can only assume so much. Okay. So the third question then, would you please read this short paragraph for me? The question we're going to answer is, how can scientific evidence create difficult choices for historians? Can you read that little bit for me? Thank you, Logan, for reading. So Logan talked about the question we're trying to answer. Sorry, this jumps. We're this close. How can new scientific evidence create a difficult choice for historians? I want you to write this one as this. It will typically prove old evidence faulty or newer evidence needs to be researched further. So it kind of leaves in the middle, right? I've got this new idea, right? I find this new bit of information that connects to something I think I know about. When you've got this new bit of information, you've almost got to convince yourself everything you thought you knew before is wrong. And you've got to be willing to do the work to figure out what is true. Okay? Can I delete this and move on? Are you okay? As long as you word it like somewhat, you don't have to have like word for word what I type. As long as you got the idea, we're good. Okay? So here's where we go next. There's one last box here. The fourth question we're trying to answer is what types of new evidence are historians utilizing when they investigate the first Americans? Okay. I'll read the first paragraph, and then actually I will just read this. In this first episode of the First Peoples, different teams of scientists present new archaeological and genetic evidence collected from remote caves and ancient burial sites to paint a detailed picture of how and when Homo sapiens arose in Africa before migrating to each of the world's continents. Historians must weigh the scientific claims based on fresh evidence, including DNA from ancient human bones, the distinctive shape of human bones, and how they have changed over millennia, especially skulls and teeth. Animal bones and arrowheads or butchering marks, scraping tools, cave paintings, observations of present day hunter gatherer people, prehistoric artifacts, jewelry, leather, and clothing, and geological science scale climate data. All of these different types of evidence support theories that both scientists and historians make about early human migration waves and exchange networks of early humans. So how people move and how they interact with each other. Okay. So when I look at my question, what types of new evidence are people utilizing? They give you a list, right? They're talking about DNA from bones. They're talking about climate data. They're talking about items that were traded, other fresh evidence, things they reference specifically. I mean, there's a bunch. How stuff has changed over millennia. They talk about, weapons. They talk about scraping tools. They talk about scar marks or like things that show that you've been injured. They use all of these different things to help paint a picture. And the more of a picture I get painted, the better I understand the task, with assuming I'm not ever going to know everything. Okay? So once you have that typed out, please, if you would, fill your Chromebook. I'm going to show you the first clip. It's about 7 minutes long. We'll talk about it. Hopefully, we get into the second clip, and we'll go from there. Okay? Find Amazon Prime account. Find the first people. With anything, whenever I show a video clip, I do ask that you have your Chromebook tilted, so I know I have your attention on this. And then we're going to, hopefully, I should already have it. We're not logged in. Oh, I guess I need to log in. We'll see if that takes that. Great if it's okay, perfect. All right, so this is about 7 minutes long. So this is going to introduce some background info for you. I'm going to try to have this kind of out in the nether region somewhere. We're going to restart this. We're going to blow this up. We're going to put some captions on so people can see what's being said because there are people talking in a variety of languages. If you would, please.
200,000 years ago, a new species emerged on the African landscape. Homo sapiens, modern human, us. Today, there are 7 billion of us living across planet Earth. This is the story of our journey from continent to continent. How we left Africa, crossed Asia, reached Australia, and colonized Europe. The final frontier was America, the last continent to be conquered. It's one of the great mysteries of archaeology. Who first set foot on American soil? When and how did they get here?
As they moved further and further south, they would know that they were truly the first people to experience those things.
These rivers would have provided all the resources that coastal peoples needed to explore deep into the interior and ultimately colonize all of North America.
Science is super exciting. This culture was there was so mad as something. Who were these first Americans? And what became of them? Their story is our story. The Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, 13,500 years ago. A ceremony takes place deep within a cave. A young woman is being buried by her clan. Archaeologists know her as Eva. When alive, she was a hunter-gatherer, like any other prehistoric person. But Eva is special to us. She could lay claim to being first American. No other remains have been found anywhere in the Americas as old as Eva. Eva's bones were discovered underwater in a vast cave system beneath the forests of Yucatan. There are chambers here the size of cathedrals and tunnels so small it's barely possible to pass through. Mexican archaeologists have been excavating these caves since 2008. Leading the team is Arturo Gonzalez.
For me, it's like the best way to make archaeology because you don't need to dig, you don't have costs, and everything is clear.
Most of the bones they find are from animals, but in among them are the remains of prehistoric humans.
We spend a lot of time diving, exploring. When finally you find some human remains, it's like a lottery. Wow, thank God, no? You have this great opportunity to touch this evidence. It's like a connection between the past and the future, present.
But why are there human bones underwater? They weren't washed in. They must have been left here when the caves were dry. During the Ice Age, so much of the world's water was frozen great sheets of ice that sea levels were lower than today, up to 400 feet lower, pushing back the coastline, changing the shape of the Americas. At that time, the cave system in the Yucatan would have been dry enough to empty and bury. The dry phase ended 8,000 years ago. Since then, the caves have been submerged, sealing in and protecting any human remains. In total, Gonzalez and his team have recovered 8 skeletons from the cave system. It's the largest collection of prehistoric humans found at any one site in North America. The star find is this one, Eva of Nahara.
This was the first skeleton that we found in the caves. It's also the oldest. We know that this is a young woman because we have the hip bones, which are very different from those of men. The skull is also a good indicator of the sex of a person. This skull is very heavy, corresponding with a young woman.
She was 4 foot 7 inches tall when alive, and still in her 20s when she died. Radiocarbon dating of her bones suggests that happened 13,500 years ago. Archaeologists believe Eva was part of a larger clan of nomads. They lived in the forest, up to 40 miles from the cave system.
Now, the question we have to ask ourselves, right? So, if they're saying this Eva of Naharan is the first to arrive in the Americas, and her body was found, let me find a map that will show you, somewhere in the Yucatan Peninsula, which is right around sort of this spot in Mexico, is how in the heck did she get there? Okay, so we're going to look at 2 primary thought patterns. Either one, she crossed across Alaska through Canada into the Americas, or maybe she went around using a waterway. Or potentially, maybe she came from Africa this way, but we won't talk at length about that idea. This idea of one of those 2, of how in the world did she end up there? Okay. So if I'm looking back at this assignment, and this is what I would work on when I show you this next clip, is here's what you're looking to do. Is we're going to be introduced to our first topic, or our first theory, which is the Clovis people. Okay, so it says, no, before you watch the video, it is important that we clarify and understand the definition of scientific theory. Scientific theory has been repeatedly supported by evidence and experimentation. So as people have analyzed these first peoples over and over and over again, the theory that you're about to watch has been supported for the Clovis people. So as you watch this next clip that introduces them, here are your primary targets to get done. One, describe the theory for me. So as you're watching the video, you can do it. Two, when did this group arrive? So give me a date time frame. And then three, what evidence supports this theory? Where was this evidence found? Again, with everything in this class, you have to have evidence to back up what you're saying. And so when we look at the Clovis people first, fill these out. What was the theory? When did they arrive? What evidence supports this theory? Okay? All right. We've got about, what time does that say? 38? Okay, so this document will get us to the end of class when we pick up. So fill this out as you watch the next 6 minutes or so of this video. I'm going to keep this going here. We're going to get this eliminated for a second. And then we're going to jump ahead a couple minutes here. We're not going to watch all of this by any means. But here you go. This will introduce you to the Clovis people.
Now I understand better why they choose specific places in order to make these rituals or making connections with the goals,
Such rituals, 13,500 years ago, are the earliest flitterings of a culture anywhere in the Americas. But for archaeologists, that's a problem. Eva was in the young town, centuries before anyone was meant to imagine North America. For decades, it's been assumed that the first Americans arrived from Siberia by foot. During the Ice Age, sea levels were so low there was a land bridge where the Bering Straits are today. But once people entered Alaska, they could go no further because Canada was covered by 2 great ice sheets and uncrossable barriers. It was only when the world warmed and the ice sheets started melting that a route to the south emerged. In Alberta, the evidence of that southern route is easy to find. A series of giant boulders scattered across the plain. They're known as erratics because they don't belong to this mountain.
So this enormous rock shouldn't actually be. In fact, its original home is about 100 miles north, but it got trapped between these 2 enormous ice sheets, and it pushed this rock south. As those ice sheets eventually melted, it deposited this rock here. Rocks like this one, they seem isolated, but when we actually map them out on the landscape, they provide us an excellent idea of where a corridor would have opened up between these 2 giant ice sheets. They really mark a passageway.
Once an ice-free corridor opened about 13,000 years ago, people could walk south into what is now the United States.
On either side of you are enormous ice sheets that are pulling apart from each other and melting. You would have heard the rush of the meltwater. You would have probably heard cracking ice and large chunks of ice breaking off of these sheets. As they moved further and further south, they would have emerged into a landscape that no humans had ever trod through. There would be no signs of human life. They would know that they were truly the first people to experience it.
This new world was home to herds of great beasts, none greater than the Columbian mammoth. Weighing up to 9 tons. It was a bonanza for any hunter to kill one. The first evidence mammoths were hunted by early Americans turned up in the 1930s at a series of sites in the southwest. Archaeologists found spearheads alongside mammoth bones. These spearheads became known as Clovis Points, after one of the sites in Clovis, New Mexico. Ever since, they've been discovered across the United States. They're so common, archaeologists describe the people who made them as Clovis people. This rock shelter in the Ozarks is a new archaeological site. Excavations have only just begun, but it seems Clovis people used the shelter as a campsite. 13,000 years ago, a family group may have stayed here a few days before moving on. Life was dominated by food, finding, processing, and eating. Hunter-gatherers are so active, they consume up to 4 times more protein than people today. Matthew Aaron is one of the directors of the archaeological site and an expert flint. He can make a Clovis point as it would have been made by early Americans.
This is a Clovis point. It's an amazing piece of Stone Age technology. No one in the Stone Age had seen anything like this by the time it was made over 13,000 years ago. Incredibly razor-sharp edges along the entire blade, and because it's got these grooves on both sides, it's easily hafted onto the end of the spear shaft. Thus, it could have also easily taken down the largest Stone Age. In a lot of ways, you can consider this to be the first American invention. This is a Clovis point that I made, and a Clovis person would have hafted it onto a piece of wood, to which they would have attached it to a large spear like this made out of cane. They could have then attached the spear to what's called an atlatl, or spear thrower. With the spear thrower, they would have had just a ton of oomph with which to hit any large Ice Age animals. So that's definitely a kill. Wow. This Clovis point went all the way through this 3-inch target. You can easily imagine the sort of damage that it would have done to the prey that Clovis people were going after. It's an incredible weapon.
I would ask that you hold off on the exit ticket until tomorrow, Tuesday the 25th. That will be your warm-up activity, as you'll then follow up on the second theory of how people migrated to the Americas. Thanks, guys.